This episode is brought to you by Disney. This Thanksgiving, Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde are back on the big screen. So grab your family and friends as Disney invites you to return to Zootopia for the phenomenal movie event of the holiday season. See all your favorite Zootopia characters plus new favorites in the most pawsome movie of the year. Don't miss Disney Zootopia 2 when it hits theaters everywhere November 26th. Get your tickets now.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. This Monday night, witness the end of an era. John Cena takes center stage for his final appearance ever on Monday Night Raw. One last match, one unforgettable farewell. Come celebrate the legacy of a true WWE legend. Monday Night Raw, November 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, only on Netflix. Be there for the moment everyone will be talking about.
Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, 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 come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm your host, Stephen Means, and this is a rant pod. It's been a while since we've done one of those. Get the text 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. These rants pods, listen, we do these call outs every so often where we try to get our texters involved and just get their thoughts on where they think some things are. And listen, nothing's off limits. You can rant about anything. Sometimes I do have a direct subject that I want people to rant about for the sake of some structure, but not today. Ohio State's 9-0. 3 games left in the season, 2 home games left. They'll play UCLA on Saturday, which means the return of Nico Iamaleava. If you remember the last time Nico came to Columbus, he was a Tennessee starting quarterback in the first round of the college football playoff. Ohio State won that game 42-17. We'll get more into that game preview later on in the week. And go subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just at Buckeye Talk on YouTube. We go live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. This week, we're going to be rewatching that Ohio State-Tennessee game to get prepared for Nico's return on Saturday. But today, Rants Pod, to get you ready for us to talk with Ryan Day later on this afternoon. We have rants. We got a couple of random ones. We got rants about Indiana. We got rants about the Heisman. We obviously have offensive line rants. We have Michigan rants. And then we have a category that, based on the rants that are in them, I named privilege, Buckeye privilege. And it's just interesting to see the perspective as Ohio State fans talk about some things. Listen, again, 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 if you want to get involved in this. I tried to pick as many as possible, but we get a lot, so I do appreciate you guys for sending these in. So let's start with the ones that are maybe not necessarily in a category. They just kind of go all over the place, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll get into some of the ones that maybe all fit into one specific category. So here's first from the 614, Bo Atkinson. I feel like nobody is talking about how disappointing of a season he is currently having. Luckily, his struggles have been overshadowed by Caden and Kenyatta's production, but he has pretty much been a non-factor this season, and his snaps seem to be going down every game. I'm aware that he wasn't brought in to be Chase Young, but he's just looked bad the few snaps that he does see. I don't think that's completely off base, but it's also kind of role dependent a little bit. I think if you were expecting Bo to come in here and be what he was at North Carolina, especially last year, I think if that was your expectation, then yes, he's been a disappointment, right? At North Carolina in 2023, he had 19 tackles, 4.5 TFLs, 3.5 sacks. And then last year, he had the breakout season, 35 tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. So far this season, 9 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, and a sack. And he had 14 pressures at North Carolina in 2023. Last year, he had 26. He has 14 so far this year and 180 snaps. Per PFF, which we always say take a grain of salt with that, he's their lowest graded defensive player of anyone who's played at least 100 snaps. In fact, anyone who's played a defensive snap, I don't know why Brandon Ennis is on here for 2 snaps. Anybody who's played, of the 40 guys who have played a defensive snap, he is the lowest graded guy on PFF with a 53 0.4. But at the same time, his pressures, he's fourth behind Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, and Arvell Reese. I think two things are true. For starters, Bo Atkinson has been brought in here, and he's playing a very specific role. He's a rotational guy, defensive end. And then when they go with the 3-down lineman look, when they take the defensive tackles off the field, he's often been the interior guy, though that wasn't necessarily the case against Purdue. They put Caden Curry in there and had Arvell Reese be an edge, and I think they had either Peyton Pierce or Riley Pettijohn in there. But 35 snaps against Texas, 11 against Grambling, 22 against Ohio, 18 against Washington, 28 against Minnesota, 24 against Illinois, 19 against Wisconsin, 14 against Penn State, and then only 9 against Purdue. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think he's been, I wouldn't say disappointing. I just think what's happened are two different things here. Arvell Reese is a dog. Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson have taken that next step in a way that they haven't needed Bo Atkinson to be what he was at North Carolina nearly as much as I think when you take a guy, especially in that spring portal, which doesn't exist anymore, by the way, he became an insurance policy that they didn't necessarily need anymore once you saw what Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson have turned into. Because, again, Caden Curry has 30 pressures this year and 7 sacks. Kenyatta Jackson has 28 pressures this year and 4.5 sacks. Arvell Reese has 22 pressures this year and 6.5 sacks. I just think the guys who were already here ended up being very good. So I think that's like worst case scenario is like, well, not more. Best case scenario is you brought in Bo Atkinson and you didn't need him as much. And now you just have Bo Atkinson. But also think about it. I think Zion Grady has started to come along in the back half of his freshman year, which helps in this conversation. But also you still need Bo Atkinson to continue to have this role because C.J. Hicks is not playing right now. C.J. Hicks has already played in 4 games. The plan is to redshirt him and only use him in an absolutely we have to play him situation, which means that he can't play this week. They don't want him to play next week, and they don't want him to play against Michigan. But then you get to Indianapolis, and those games don't count against your 4. So once they get in the postseason, C.J. Hicks can play. And so I almost am wondering if C.J. Hicks takes over the Bo Atkinson role once he's able to play again. He's played 4 games, 50 snaps so far, and then you have Big Ten championship game, and then depending on what happens in that game, 3 or 4 playoff games where you can still play C.J. Hicks. So he's going to end up playing 9 games this year if you reach the national championship game potentially. But I just think he's fine. He's a rotational guy. And I think if you were expecting him to be more than that I don't think that was ever going to be the plan for Bo Atkinson. From the 717, good rent is the Buckeyes in the NFL right now. Jesus. Travion Henderson, Hughes Day, Emeka Ibuka, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. Yeah. I feel like it's every week there's like a Buckeye that's just kind of going off, which I think helps the program, right? Which is why they promoted so much. But here's the actual rant. I want your professional opinion. An announcer made a comment, and I can't stop thinking that's just what our offense is this year. They squeeze and suffocate you, holding the ball for 40-plus minutes. Scoreboard not necessarily as high as it could be, but is that us this year just killing the clock and striking when we need to? Defense is already explosive, and we give them lots of time on the bench to catch a break before coming back to force a 3-and-out. That was what they were against Purdue, yes. That's what they were against Texas, even if the score was a little bit different. I think that's what they were against Washington. But we've also seen games where they've come out and been explosive, right? I mean, the Penn State game, they came out and they were throwing 40-yard bombs down the field. I think they're spending 11 games doing what's necessary. And not even 11 games. They're spending 9 of the 11 games doing what's necessary to win the game. And if that is, we're going to have the ball 40 of the 60 minutes like they did against Purdue, then they're going to do that. If that is, we're going to come out and throw haymakers the entire game against Penn State, then we're going to do that. We're going to come out against Minnesota and let Julian Sand air it out. We're going to do that. But I think the only games, in hindsight, that this team came out where the concept of the game was going to be, we're going to be who we're going to be in the playoff, was always going to be the Penn State game, which is why you saw what you saw from Julian Sand in that game. And then I think the thing everybody is hoping they do is they do this against Michigan, and then they're going to do this in the college football playoff. Ryan Day, in his radio show last Thursday, he had a quote where he essentially said, in fact, I can just pull up the direct quote. when it's time to turn up the gas, we will. When you're efficient and you're playing like that, a 3-score game can feel way out of reach, where I feel like maybe in the past it was like, okay, we're just getting started on the game. They're doing what's necessary right now. I do not think this is what we're seeing in some of these games where Ohio State can pick their score, where in the past they might win the game 50-7 and now they're winning it 38-14 or whatnot. I do not think this is what we are going to see in the college football playoff. I think this is a result of a team who, Jake Butt, who I think he's my favorite color commentator. I think he needs to be on TV more. I think he's the best guy doing this right now because he comes in, it feels like he's informed. He knows what he's talking about. And it doesn't feel like he's like favoring one team or another. Like, he's a Michigan player. He played at Michigan, but it doesn't come across when he's doing his job. He's just a color commentator, a journalist who's doing his job, and he's doing it very, very well. He brought up the fact that Ohio State's total snaps, they've played 67 less snaps than the average amount of snaps the rest of college football has played, especially the teams who are in the hunt to be in the college football playoff, which essentially meant that Ohio State stole an entire extra game's worth of snaps and essentially added a third bye week. And they did that last year, and obviously they lost 2 games last year, so it didn't work to perfection because they lost a couple games, but it did work to perfection because they had played less laps than anybody in the playoff last year, and look what they look like when they got on that stage. And so that is their formula to winning. They're almost approaching it the way NBA teams do, where it's like, we can't be on for 16 straight games or 17 straight games if we're trying to win a national title. So we're going to do what's necessary. We're going to limit things. We're going to be focusing on efficiency and working out the kinks of things. And then when you get to November, late November, December, January, then we're going to put the pedal to the metal. And then what worked for them last year, they think that's going to work for them this year. And I don't see a reason why there's not going to work this year because they still dominated everybody and controlled every game. It's just not as much of a firework as I think we've grown accustomed to seeing with Ryan Day's offenses. And it's working this well because you have an elite defense that has allowed you to be in situations where you never have to do more than what's necessary, unlike years past where they have been in some games where they've had to do more than what's necessary because the defense hasn't necessarily been up to par the same way. From the 419, the following is a tweet I saw over the last decade. Will Howard, Kyle McCord, CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins, and JT Barrett combined to start 117 games. In those 117 games, they completed 80% of their passes and threw for 300 yards 14 times. Julian Sand has done it 5 times in 9 career starts. Julian Sand is and will be the greatest quarterback to ever come out of Ohio State. I would say ever. His accuracy has never been seen before. His ability to process and make adjustments is elite. His footwork is so good. And most importantly, he has never, ever been phased. This offense is unstoppable when it finally decides to stop tinkering with its million tight ends and running backs. He is so good. The NFL is not ready for what's coming. I don't even think OSU fans are ready for how good Sand is going to be. I agree. This has gone much better than I think anybody maybe anticipated it going. He's the perfect quarterback. But he also has the perfect receivers, if that makes sense, right? Like, he doesn't miss, but also Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate don't drop anything to the point that it was weird that JJ dropped a couple of passes early in the year, right? When your receivers catch everything and your quarterback doesn't miss, that's how you can get the efficient explosiveness that we saw, especially against Penn State, and I think we're all anticipating seeing in the college football playoff. From Jake. No rant, but does anybody have any advice for a first-time dad? We're due on New Year's Eve, so coming soon. Thanks. Congratulations on the kid. I do not have any advice for you because I do not have any children. I have a pet that we treat like a child, but she's not an actual child. Her name is Ducky. So, but good luck. Congratulations on the child. But I am not the person to ask. And unless Stefan and Andrew are living a life that I'm very much not aware of, they don't have any kids either. So we apologize for that. But thanks for the question. From the 951, don't get me wrong, the defense has been great. But why isn't Matt Patricia dialing up more blitzes? And the run defense needs to step it up. Also, the tinkering around with things is starting to get old now. The play calling needs to get better. Tired of all the tinkering. They don't blitz because they don't have to. right now. They tinker because they can. Stefan and I hit on this. It's a frustrating watch, and this is not the last time I'm going to address this because it's a growing sentiment. It is not always fun to watch Ohio State play football right now because of what they're doing. They're literally practicing on Saturdays, and it's not always a fun watch, but it is necessary because they're going to get on the playoff, and I promise you, if this season plays out the way at least I think it's about to play out, we're all going to be going, thank you, they spent those random games where they knew they could win by 30 tinkering. But I also understand the other side of that factor, which we'll get into when we get into some of the Michigan things. That's the other side of that is maybe it's not just tinkering, it's who they are. And how many games in a row can you still call it tinkering and everybody be okay with it? So I completely understand it. But the blitzing, they're not blitzing because they don't have to. They're sitting back and forcing teams to drive on them, and then Matt Patricia's picking his spots and sending blitzes. He sent a few blitzes against Texas. I think he'll probably send a few at Bryce Underwood. But at the same time, I don't know if that's the right approach, right? I thought the right approach with Ethan Grunkermeyer was to sit back, load the box, and not let them be able to run the ball and make Ethan Grunkermeyer make throws. Now, Penn State schemed up some things, and so they were able to get some runs to the outside. Like, there's no defense that's perfect. Every defense has something. Every defense has an answer to it. And if it felt like Barry Odom, who's a decent college football coach, found some answers to it early on, okay. If Penn State was able to find some answers to it early on, okay, but they weren't able to sustain those answers. That's the thing. Jim Knowles was not wrong when he said a couple of years ago the idea like every defense has an escape hatch and it's up to the offense to figure out what that escape hatch is, but not just figure out what it is, but be able to sustain consistent success against that escape hatch. And that's the thing no one has done. Sure, Washington moved the ball for a little bit. Sure, Purdue moved the ball for a little bit. Sure, Penn State moved the ball for a little bit, but they only scored 7 points, right? They were gifted the other 7 because C.J. Donaldson fumbled the ball in plus territory for Penn State, and so they got a short field and were able to turn it into something. But Penn State didn't find consistent success, and so the challenge is there a team who can consistently find success against Ohio State and this defense, even if it does have some escape hatches, because every defense does. From Anthony and Finley. I mean, I keep meaning to ask you this, Anthony, because you've been active for us, and we really appreciate it. Are you Finley? Are you from like Finley up where Luke Montgomery is from? Let me know. 614-350-3315. I like that area of Ohio. It's great. It's a small area, but I like that area. I feel like Buckeye Nation needs to brace themselves for the real possibility that Hartline leaves this offseason for a head coaching job. I just think this coaching carousel has a lot of very attentive opportunities. I personally don't believe he's Ohio State's next head coach in waiting. Ryan Day is relatively young and could potentially be here for another 20 years if he wanted to. I think it's foolish to blindly believe Hartline is going to be here forever and not want to further his coaching career elsewhere. Not saying he's definitely going to leave, but I don't like that a lot of fans are closed-minded to the idea of it. If I'm an AD at another Power 4 school, Penn State, for example, my only concern is that he's only been a play-calling OC for 1 year. Other than that, why not take a chance on him if other potential top targets turn you down? Brian Hartline's not going to be here forever, right? But he's also a unique case. And James Laurinaitis is sort of like this too, because they're Buckeyes, right? They played here. With Brian Hartline, he's from here, right? He's from Canton, Ohio. And they've made they're not like climbing the ladder the same way that, say, like Ryan Day was, or Keenan Bailey is, or Billy Fessler is, or, you know, Matt Guerreri is, the other young coaches on the staff who are, this is like a stepping stone to where they're eventually going to end up at, because there were NFL players and pretty quality NFL players, right? Like Brian Hartline has multiple 1,000-yard seasons in the career. They made a lot of money there, so they don't have to do anything they don't want to do. They can stay here at a place that is literally home for both of them as long as they want to be here. Because, one, they're good at their jobs. They're arguably the best at their job. Like, Brian Hartline's the best wide receiver coach in college football. And James Laurinaitis is very quickly here becoming one of the best linebacker coaches in college football, right? And so they don't have to leave. And I do think that for fans, that maybe throws off the math of how long they stay. Because they don't have to do anything they don't want to do. Who says Brian Hartline wants to further his career as a coach? Who says he doesn't, too, though, right? Because he has taken some interviews, right? He interviewed for, I think it was West Virginia last year. I think he interviewed for the Cincinnati job in the past as well. And never with the intent of him actually leaving, but just getting the experience of going through the interviewing process. So, yes, there is a timeline here, and there is an expiration date, especially the moment Ryan Day made him OC, and especially the moment Chip Kelly left and he was handed the keys to the offense, right? There was always going to be an expiration date on how long Brian Hartline is going to be here. But is that for sure going to be after this year? Sure. I think logically you can wrap your head around the idea of, like, look how many jobs are already open, right? The UCLA job is open. The Penn State job is open. The LSU job is open. The Auburn job just open. The Florida job is open. And who knows what that's going to do, right? Who knows? Maybe I know Lane Kiffin is talking like he's not leaving Ole Miss, but we'll see what happens at the end of this year, right? Who knows what other jobs are going to open up over the next couple of months here? Things are going to get real crazy, and part of the reason they're going to get crazy is because they didn't get crazy last year. Nobody got hired last year, so everybody's getting fired this year. So what does that mean for people in Brian Hartline's shoes, or like any other hot coordinator who may be up to have a head coaching job, right? But so much of this is what does Brian Hartline want, right? He's got Chris Henry Jr. coming in January. He's got a litany of wide receivers over the next couple of years who are going to be coming in here. So it's a tough conversation because you're talking about a guy who's not just a guy who came here for a job. He's a guy who never thought he was going to be a coach and randomly one day decided, yeah, I'll come be a GA. And then one day the Zach Smith stuff's happening, and now he's running the room in a year where Dwayne Haskins is setting the world on fire, and then he takes over the room, and we've seen what he's done. But I don't think fans are wrong for being flippant about the idea like Brian Hartline might be here longer than most people who would have accomplished what Brian Hartline's accomplished over the last 7 years would be here. But I also agree with you, Anthony, that we have to be real about this, and that if you think that Brian Hartline is going to be here for another 10 years, I just don't think that's a realistic thing. I just think if he's here next season, not going to be shocked. If he's gone, not going to be shocked. But also, that's what college football is. When you're a good football program, people want to steal your coaches. That's a very normal thing here. From the 509, not necessarily a rant, but a talking point. In the post-game pod, Andrew brought up the point that OSU has now won 8 straight games by 3 scores combined. I don't think Andrew brought that up. I don't know who brought it up, but somebody did. Do you think that could actually hurt this team? It seems crazy to ask, is it bad to kick the snot out of your opponent? But this team really hasn't had to gut out a win in the fourth quarter. Do you think that could be an issue in the playoffs against a team that has maybe pulled off a tight win or two? Hindsight is always 20/20, right? It just depends on how you want to spin things. If you remember, after they beat Nebraska 21-17 last year, there were 2 ways you could take that. The way we all took it was, how did you go into a bye week where things didn't look great after the Oregon game, and you came out after 2 weeks, and this is the effort you put up? While Ryan Day spun it as, it's a good thing this happened, because now we know what it looks like if we get in a position where our backs are up against the wall. It's good to see that we can do this, because they also had to do it against Penn State the next week, right? Ryan Day, another example is, ask Ryan Day if he likes playing a top 3 matchup to open up his season, because he's done it twice. Top 5 matchup. He did it against Notre Dame in 2022, and he did it this year with Texas. He probably thinks, yeah, it was great that we got that out the way. We got to learn about ourselves early because they won the football game. If they would have lost the football game, he probably wouldn't be saying, oh, I'm so happy we got to open up the season with a top 5 matchup, right? He'd probably be saying, I wish we had a couple of games before that to get ready for that level of game. So this issue, if they get through the season and they're 16-0 and they're holding up a trophy, and it's like, oh, they never got to play a close game. Well, yeah, because they were just better than everybody else. If they go 15-1, 14-1, 13-1, and it feels like they lost a close game, then of course hindsight's going to tell you, man, they never had to do this until now, and now they weren't ready for it. So it's probably one of the million things that keeps Ryan Day up at night. So it's, again, these are genuine thoughts to have, but it's also one that's, you can't really have a legitimate answer to it until like hindsight, right? It's the most hindsight is 20/20 thing that you can have because, I don't know, maybe you just kick the snot out of everybody, right? Or who knows, maybe things get weird on Saturday and UCLA makes this close, or maybe Rutgers makes this close, or the Michigan game is close. Who knows what might happen over the next couple of weeks? But right now, they're just kicking the snot out of everybody because they're better than everybody else. Last one before we take our first break from the 949. I have a rant that thousands of Buckeyes agree with. Why don't we give our backup quarterback meaningful time passing and running? I can't think of more than 4 or 5 passes in all of our overwhelming victories thrown by our number 2 QB. The day would come when he will be called upon to take over the offense, and he literally has not been in a real game situation since high school. How much better would he perform if he had played 4 or 5 quarters, including passing, not just handing off? As a former Division 1A player, I can tell you there is an unbelievable difference between high school speed and Big Ten college speed of the game. Let's use some of the opportunities we will have in the next few weeks to expose Lincoln to Big Ten college speed, much more realistic than what he has faced practicing with the twos during the week. If the quarterback competition was as tight as proclaimed, I don't think any of the future wins will be at risk by giving him some significant steps. If the competition was as tight as proclaimed, I do not think it was. I know that others feel that it was, and I understand that Ryan Day felt it was, but I never felt it was that close at any moment. I felt like Lincoln maximized his opportunity, but it doesn't mean that I felt like this was close. It's just I've been here since 2018, and not once has the guy I thought was going to win the quarterback battle not won the quarterback battle. I think there has been one legitimately close quarterback battle since I've been here, and it was 2023, and it was not a good thing that it was a close quarterback battle as we have seen now in terms of hindsight, right? I think Lincoln's a good quarterback. I'm not sure he's ever going to be the starter here, so I'll start with that because Julian Sand's going to be the starter for at least the next 2 years, and I think Tavian St. Clair will be the starter next year. Lincoln Keenholz has a decision to make about his future after this year as a guy who's going to be going into his 4th year next year, and that's not being flippant, that's being real about where this could be headed, right? Like Devin Brown was here for 3 years and he left because he never won the job. Jack Miller was here for 2 years and he left because he never won the job, right? We have to be realistic about those things. But also, we can't look at what Julian Sand is doing right now and how historic it is and how top-notch it has been for 9 straight games, where the only reason it wasn't like this against Texas is because they didn't ask him to do it and didn't necessarily provide the road for him to do it because they didn't need him to do it and didn't want him to do it in that game. We can't just say that anybody could have stepped into this and done it. We can't. So, he's completing 80% of his passes. I don't know 100% that Lincoln Keenholz would have completed 80% of his passes. But to answer your question of why they don't do it, because they just don't. They've never done it. Dwayne didn't play a lot before he took over as a starter in 2018, and it wasn't a problem. CJ literally didn't throw a pass before he took over, and that it wasn't a problem. He's not the reason they lost to Oregon. The defense is the reason they lost to Oregon, right? He was great if you go look at those numbers. Kyle McCord, he just wasn't as good as those two, right? And, Julian Sand threw 12 passes and 27 snaps last year, and he was a third-string quarterback. And look what he's doing. So it's another thing where it's a problem, and it's not a problem until it's a problem. Did Kyle McCord essentially being a handoff machine in 21 and 22, is that the reason why he maybe wasn't at the level that the other guys before him were in 2023? Or was he just never at the level of what C.J. Stroud and Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins were at, right? I don't know if he'd have thrown 40 more passes, he would have been that much better, right? Will Howard had all the experience in the world here, and he's nowhere near as good as what Julian Sand has been through the first 9 games of his career here. So you're right, experience matters, and it's why you started to see them at some other positions on Saturday, mix in different guys. You saw Riley Pettijohn in that first series. You saw a bunch of wide receivers play. They were rotating at the offense. It's why they're doing it everywhere else, but Day just doesn't want to do it at quarterback, and I don't think it's burned him yet, and I also don't know if it will burn him. I would like to see Tavian St. Clair maybe play one more time, but I'm just not sure the games are going to work out in the way that you do. It's just not the way they do things. And I think We asked so much about it with Kyle McCord in 2022 that it's just not worth asking about at this point because the answer is not going to change. He just doesn't want to do that. That's not what they're going to do, especially not in the first year of a new starting quarterback. He wants to get Julian Sand as many reps as humanly possible, and that takes precedent over Lincoln Kienholz getting in-game reps right now. And sure, you can live in this world of like, oh, what happens if Lincoln Kienholz has to come into this game? Well, if Lincoln Kienholz has to come into this game, they're probably not winning a national title. That's the truth. Like, what I understand what happened with Cardell. That's such a once-in-a-lifetime situation to happen. That's not the expectation. Typically, you lose your starting quarterback, you're not winning a national title. So it's just what they do. I wish I had a better answer for you, 949. And I agree with everything, the sentiment of why you that was your rant. It's not what they want to do. Let's take a break, and then we'll come back. And somehow Indiana and Ohio State fans are beefing online. And who would have thought we'd get here? But here we are. And we'll get into some rants on that when we come back from the break here on Buckeye Talk.
The Lincoln Wishlist sales event is happening now. Here's what's on everyone's wish list. Enjoying holiday jingles with brilliant 3D audio that surrounds you? Check. Watching snow flurries through the panoramic Vista roof? Check. Packing up presents with the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Check. Everything you want. All standard on the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com for exceptional offers on 2025 Lincoln vehicles today.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, your host, your very humble host here at the Rants Pod with our texter, 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, we're taking rants from the texters. This is our first category. I think we're going to start here. No, let's start with the offensive line, actually. From the 419, amazing team, but the O-line still isn't there. What is Scum's strength? And they're talking about Michigan winning the trenches. We must protect the QB and try to throw to set up the run. Not sure if this line is capable of doing that. And now throw in some injuries. This team feels like it is one O-line injury and a poor game plan away from losing the biggest game of the year. Still would make the playoff, but that would be a devastating loss. Talk me off the ledge or explain why the poor line play I'm seeing isn't a huge issue. The tighter that game is at half, the harder it will be to see us win there. From the 513, this is going to be a popular topic. Yes, it was. But the right side of the offensive line is borderline bad right now. Got to fix that ASAP before November 29th. And the postseason, still stuck on the Armstrong. Oh, sorry. And then from the 717, still stuck on the Armstrong brothers being 4-star offensive linemen and hasn't beat out Van Sickle or Shabola. I'll start with the Armstrong part. They're developmental. They were always brought in here to be developmental projects, and checking in on them in year 3. Well, next spring will be year 3, and we'll check in and see where they're at, right? But they were always more developmental projects, which if you look at their 2026 offensive line class right now, Sam Greer's he should be on the field in 24 months guy. I think Maxwell Riley's he should be on the field in 24 months guy. I don't think there's anybody else of the 5 guys they have in that class right now that you would classify as they need to be on the field in the next 24 months guy from the moment they sign, right? Like Sam Greer is a borderline 5-star recruit. Maxwell Riley's a top 150 recruit. Tucker Smith is in the 532. Landry Breed is in the thousands. Mason Willem is in the thousands. Like those 3 guys are going to be no different than the Armstrong twins, where it's like, let's see where they're at in a couple of years here, because that's more of a developmental, which I'm fine with. If you have an offensive line class where it's 5 or 6 guys and half of them are 20 or 24 months from now they should be on the field, and the other half are like they're more developmental, that's fine, because that gives you depth in the room. That means there's guys developing in the background, but there's also guys that you expect to be like immediate impact guys for you, so I don't necessarily have a problem with that. Gabe Van Sickle was like Tyler, like there are some people in the building, like not just Tyler Bowen, a lot of people are like really excited about Gabe Van Sickle and what he's done. Tegra Shabola, as we talked about on the Monday pod, it's just, I think that bottomed out on Saturday, and it's why it's so important to get Josh Padilla healthy. Overwhelming, because I don't want to spend another 45 minutes talking about the right side of the offensive line after we talked about him on Monday and we talked about him on Saturday, and we haven't talked to a human being about him since then. They got to get Josh Padilla healthy so they can get a real idea of where this is headed, because that was not great on Saturday. Gabe Van Sickle looked like a guy getting his first meaningful snaps of his career. It was up and it was down. I liked what I saw from Ian Moore, and they got to get Phillip Daniels healthy. But it's what's Scum's strength? Running the ball. I don't know if they have a strength defensively, really. They're not a great defense this year. They don't have Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant on the interior this year, 419. So if you're worried about they're going to try to run the ball at 2 first-rounders on the interior, there are not 2 first-rounders on the interior. I actually think, and you guys can, I know I'm going to make your ears bleed when I say this, I think Ohio State can run on Michigan this year. They should not, but it would be a more reasonable game plan if they did it this year versus doing it last year when it was abysmal to even try it. Throw the ball, with that being said. So, yes, I think the next 2 weeks should be about trying to figure out this offensive line on the right side, which starts with just getting Josh Padilla healthy so you have all the possible candidates who could win the job over there healthy enough that you can play them for the next 2 weeks and figure this thing out. Okay, now let's talk about Michigan. We're here. Let's talk about Michigan. From the 9-3-7, this is a very different season. The team is obviously better in a lot of ways, and it's very methodical with how they go about their work. And I don't think they're doing anything crazy on defense because they're saving that for Michigan and Indiana. Retweet. From the 7-7-5, offensive line play is not up to last year's standard. You need to take the gloves off the offense these next 2 games to get warmed up for Michigan. Rutgers game, yes. I think they're going to tinker again on Saturday because it's your last chance to do it. So I know it's not fun to watch. It kind of is annoying sometimes to watch the team that you know can go 100 million miles per hour, go 15 miles per hour because they're trying to see what they have. But I think this is the last time we see this team tinker. And it's because it's an opportunity to do so against UCLA, I know they had a little bump there when they fired their head coach, but that's clearly worn off. I think this is the last week we see tinkering because it's necessary. It's annoying, but it is necessary. I do understand that it is necessary to learn about your team, and there's no better way to learn about your team than in real actual game snaps, and that's what they're getting some of these young guys. From the 8-5-7, this is not a rant. I agree with your analysis that the coaches are trying things to see what works and what doesn't. However, as a fan, I still have some big game against that team trauma, and feel, are they trying to show how tough they are again? I know I should not feel that way. I just can't help it. I need that last game to be one where they open up the offense and use all their weapons effectively instead of what they did that game last year. I'm still getting flashbacks, not sure if the other fans are getting them as well. And that's why I understand why everybody gets antsy every time they start tinkering. Because is it tinkering to learn, or is it tinkering because this is what you're trying to do on November 29th? Because they did this tinkering last year, and it wasn't to learn. It was to do what they were going to do on November 29th, and it didn't work, and everybody was upset. That is it right there. It's how much do you trust that this is just about learning about your football team? Because if it's just about learning about your football team, I think everybody's okay with that. But the moment it starts to feel like this is what they're going to do against Michigan, that is when it becomes a problem, which is why the first quarter against Michigan, I think there's going to be a lot of people on the edge of their seats. If they run the ball in the first play, I would imagine our text thread is quite, I'm not going to say toxic, but quite antsy. I do not think this is what they are going to do on November 29th. For now. So if I'm talking you guys off of the ledge, I think what we've seen against Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State, second half against Washington. that is what this team is. That is its identity. I think they are fully aware at this point that that is their identity. And so because they have established that and understand that, they are taking the time to work out the kinks in some other places while also getting young guys valuable experience that'll pay off in the long haul. I am choosing to trust in that for now. And I think it's okay if you choose to trust in that for right now, while also not putting your full trust in that in a way that you're caught off guard if you end up being wrong. I understand the reservations about it. From the 440, Brian Hartline is not a good OC. It's painful to watch this team stack the box with several tight ends and run into a phone booth. This team is an 11-personnel team. You are an elite passing attack. Stop forcing something that hasn't worked all year. I get you want to run, but spread teams out a bit and use the pass to set up the run. The tight ends were horrid in the blocking against Purdue. Even Will Kazmarek missed at least one block. Your top two backs are freshmen. Play them the most reps. If you don't like that, then you shouldn't have went cheap at running back and paid for Justice Haynes. Fair point. Also, but at the same time, Justice Haynes is hurt right now, so I don't know if that would have done them any good. Also, can we talk about how horrible the portal class was? Went cheap, but we also don't want to pay for high school recruits. Where is the money going? And so much for getting proven players in the portal. Ethan and Yawa, CJ Donaldson, and Bo Atkinson are all dreadful. I touched on Bo Atkinson earlier, so I won't touch on that one again. But Ethan Onyawa, yeah, that's probably the biggest miss since Ohio State's used the portal. It's probably their biggest portal miss of the last few years here. And that's a fair point to say. I don't think CJ Donaldson's a miss. I think he's like Bo Atkinson. He is what he is. He's here because you had a bunch of young running backs. And, like, did y'all see Isaiah West, his pass pro on Saturday? That's why CJ Donaldson is here. He is here to be a situational back. They know that Bo Jackson and Isaiah West are their best two running backs. And it seems like James Peoples is starting to actually get a little bit better. He's run better the last couple of weeks. They know that those are the three in that order. Bo Jackson, Isaiah West, James Peoples. In games that matter, that's who's getting the ball. And if you've seen, Bo Jackson's been getting the ball 13 to 15 times over the last couple of weeks. That's going to go up to 15 to 20 times once you get to the Michigan and the Big Ten Championship and the College Football Playoff. You saw Isaiah West got about 9 carries. That's going to go up to like 12 carries once you get to Michigan, the College Football Playoff, Big Ten Championship game. James Peoples, so get in where he fits in, and then C.J. Donaldson will be in there for situationals because you just don't want to put young players who haven't had to do that very much in their lives in those situations of you want to throw it and you can't throw it because your running back didn't pick up a blitzer because he doesn't know how. Because he's only been doing it for 9 months. And pass pro is not an easy thing to learn, especially for a running back who spent his entire life with the ball in his hands. Ethan and Yaw was a miss. I understand that. And I'm not going to try to dispute that. But I think C.J. Donaldson is necessary. I think part of the problem with this portal class is it's coming off of a year where they did get a bunch of stars, right? Quinshon Judkins, Seth McLaughlin. The fact that Josh Simmons the year before that ended up being way better than what he was as a portal guy, right, and being a first-round draft pick. Caleb Downs in that class. Even Will, like you had a bunch of dudes who were like impact players for you, and I think it's kind of shifted like the concept of what the portal classes at Ohio State have been. If you go look at their past portal classes, like Tanner McAllister wasn't like a superstar on this team. He was a plug-and-play guy. Davidson Igbinosun, he's probably on the Downs, Quinshon Judkins side of like, we're bringing you in here and you need to be one of our dudes. Jonah Jackson was a plug-and-play in 2019. Justin Fields, because they didn't like the quarterback situation, so he's a star. But that's where they're at with their portal. Their portal guys are typically necessary, plug-and-play, or star. And I think last year was a bunch of stars, and this year is a bunch of necessary plug-and-play. And the one guy you thought was going to be your star has been a miss, and so it's made things look a little louder. But I would say for what their roles are, I think C.J. Donaldson is a hit because he's not here to be your star running back. He's here for the moments where it's probably not in your best interest to have a freshman running back out there. Max Clare quality receiving tight end, but he's still learning to develop fully as a tight end and not just be a receiver, but be a guy who can block for you. And he's hit or miss. He's not always great, but he has his moments, right? I think Will Kazmarik's had a pretty solid season. Saturday wasn't his best day, but I think overall he's been pretty quality. And Bo Atkinson, again, complimentary. They got a bunch of complimentary guys out of the portal. And I think that's fine because they're not looking for stars in the portal. If a Caleb Downs hops in there, they'll go get the Caleb Downs. Like, for instance, if Dylan Stewart hops in the portal, I would be shocked if Ohio State doesn't get in the mix. If Chaz Coleman at Penn State hops in the portal, I would be shocked if Ohio State doesn't hop in the mix. But they're not searching for superstars in the portal. They're searching for guys to fill a need in a hole. And these guys did that, even if they aren't the stars of the roster. So some of it's expectation. I get it. Are they meeting the expectation you thought they were going to meet? No. But what was your expectation? Was your expectation for them to be stars or to fill a hole? And they filled that hole. I think Brian Hartline's fine. Again, that just goes back to, like you said, it's painful to watch this team stack the box with several tight ends. I don't think they're going to do that in the playoff. Again, I'm choosing to believe that. A couple other things before we get into Indiana. Ryan from Winton Woods. Here's my rant. Let me set the scene for you. It's November 29th, 2025, around 1 p.m. I have kicked my wife and 2 small daughters out of the house. I'm sending them to watch Wicked 2, so they are happy. I respect that. I think, me and my girlfriend are going to go see Wicked before the game. So that'll be our happy moment. I respect that. So I respect it. Wicked was good. I'm not really a theater person, so when Wicked the movie last year came out, that was like my introduction to it, and holy cow, that was amazing. It makes me want to go see the actual play because it was that good. I've been listening to the soundtrack for the last year. It was great. It was great. I'm glad I was introduced to that. That was awesome. Wicked's a really good thing. I'm in my black 10 Saiyan jersey, my dog Ginger in her red Buckeye jersey. Every time I scream, "Throw the damn ball," she gets up and cowers. LOL. Side note, I don't scream often. My dog's just a chicken. But my rant, throw the damn ball. My dog can't take this. Neither can I. I'm going to send that to Ryan Day. Ryan, throw the ball. I'm going to make T-shirts. I'm serious. I'm going to make T-shirts. I think I'm going to wear the T-shirt to the Michigan game. I'm not really going to do that, but I might make T-shirts. Because the run the damn ball stuff is great. This team doesn't need to have that mindset. They need to have the mindset of whatever they need to do to get the ball in 4 and 17's hands as much as possible on November 29th. That's what they need to do. Because if they don't, I don't know what's going to happen. Heisman, Indiana stuff. From the 216, I don't know if this qualifies, but we got to talk about these Indiana fans. I started out loving the success they're having. It's good to see the most losingest loser team win a few games, but now they are beside themselves, talking trash about Columbus and Raising Cane's is where I draw the line. They have to be stopped. Scratch that. It was Roosters, but still, they are tripping. From the 616, not much of a rant, but I'm taking the bait. The Indiana Twitter trolls have got to me, and I can't wait to humble that program on December 6th. People forget, but Indiana fans got bent out of shape because Ohio State went to the Big Ten Championship during the COVID year despite not playing 6 games. Even though we beat them, for a school that hasn't won anything relevant in football ever, their fans sure are annoying. I just, that concept of a coach telling you, act like you've been there before? Indiana's never been there before, so they can't act like it if they've never done it. I think what's happened with Indiana, because it happened with Vanderbilt in the SEC, where they went from the plucky upstart that everybody was cheering for because they were this new fun thing, to now the fan base is like, oh yeah, we belong here. We're going to talk our you-know-what. And now we're like, all right. They've gone from the fun, loving thing to now you're kind of sick of them, right? And I think that's great. I think that's great for the sport. I think it's great that Indiana and Ohio State fans are getting chippy with each other, because who would have thought that 24 months ago, right? We all definitely thought it was either going to be Penn State or Oregon or Michigan, or maybe Luke Fickell gets some things shaken at Wisconsin, or maybe Matt Rule gets something shaken at Nebraska. Indiana? that's the team that has college sports up in arms right now. I think that's amazing. They were the worst program in college football up until last week. Now it's Northwestern. They have the worst winning percentage in the history of college football. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing to watch. So keep going back and forth. Keep it respectful, obviously, but I'm loving it. I'm loving this month-long build-up of Ohio State and Indiana fans just going at each other. Because it's hilarious. It's hilarious to watch. I love it. I love it. Shout out to the Indiana fans, man. And shout out to Ohio State fans, too, because I love this so much. The other side of that coin is the serious part of this. From the 7-4-0, I'm sick of hearing that Mendoza had his Heisman moment against Penn State this past weekend. Indiana struggled against a mid-Penn State team. I don't feel like bailing your team out with a poorly thrown pass, but a great catch by your receiver should earn you the Heisman Trophy. No doubt that Indiana is a solid team and Mendoza is a good quarterback. I just don't feel like they can compete, and when it's time to go head-to-head with a dominant blue blood like the Buckeyes. From the 216, my rant is Ohio State throttles Penn State, and it means nothing because they're struggling. Even Northwestern beat them at home. Indiana barely survives, and it's a great win and gives Mendoza the Heisman, even though it was the receivers that made that final drive. From the 210, why is Dan Orlovsky not including the betting favorite in Vegas as a Heisman frontrunner? Dude was a below-average quarterback his entire career. If you're going to say it, at least back it up and say why. But there's not a single coach in the country that would trade Sand for Mendoza. From Ryan in the 513, can we please stop trying to award the Heisman by creating your own moment against a mid-team that you play bad the entire game, then save it at the end with a throwaway pass that was caught by a miracle? This, a week after Sand plays the same team and has a perfect game and 4 TDs and almost double the yards and no turnovers. Thanks. Regarding Ann Arbor, from the 513, regarding Ann Arbor, in the words of Al Davis, just win, baby. Also, what are the odds Ohio State beats Indiana in the Big Ten Championship, but Mendoza still wins the Heisman? And then from the 502, the concept of the Heisman moment is the dumbest fake metric in all of sports. Voters are handpicked to make an educated selection of the most deserving winner, and half of them throw away 90% of the games just to have their minds made up by a single play. Watch all the film or give up your vote. The national media trying to crown Mendoza for his receiver making an alien catch at the end of a game he didn't complete 66% of his passes in is ridiculous. I love this. I can feel the anger and the frustration coming through the text. I love it. I love it. Especially the didn't complete 66% of his passes, because Ohio State gets to live in a world where its quarterback's completing 80% of his passes. So it's like, come on, man, you weren't even average and our guy's abnormal. The winner in Indianapolis on December 6th, assuming both of these teams take care of business, is going to win the Heisman Trophy. So I think we have all, as media members, have had our moments where we have talked about the Heisman Trophy, because I think all the candidates have had their moments in the sun, whether it be Texas A&M's Marcel Reed, Alabama's Ty Simpson, Indiana's Fernando Mendoza, or Ohio State's Julian Sand and Jeremiah Smith. Even here last week we went live, and Andrew and Stefan and I said who we think we would pick had the Heisman Trophy race ended last week, how would our ballots have shaped out if we had votes. So everybody has done it. The candidates are at the starting point, and championship weekend is going to decide who wins this thing. So any conversation about a Heisman Trophy over the next couple of weeks when none of these teams play anybody of relevance does not matter to me. Other than, Marcel Reed's got to play Texas, so that's kind of interesting. And obviously with Julian Sand, if he doesn't beat Michigan, he can't win the award. So if these teams handle business and get the conference championship weekend, where 3 of them are undefeated and Alabama's only loss is still to Florida State, then we'll decide some things. I also think it's hilarious to watch Ohio State fans do the why are we giving him credit for what the receiver did thing. And the reason I love it isn't because it's ironic. It's because they feel like they deal with that. You guys feel like that's what you guys deal with your quarterbacks all the time, is your quarterbacks not getting credit because the receivers are so awesome. So it's great to watch you guys feel the need to do that to another quarterback. I love it. Seriously, I love all this. I'm all for healthy arguing in sports, as long as people keep it respectful. And so all of these are valid points. no one's paying attention to Ohio State. And that's what made the Penn State game so necessary, because I know the game did not turn out to be what people thought it was going to be in terms of the buildup, because Penn State's season has gone to the dumpster fire. But that was the first time since the first week of the season that eyes were on Ohio State. So while us in this bubble, meaning the people who cover this team, meaning you as a fan base, have understood what Julian Sand was for 2 months, the world, unfortunately, because Ohio State has been so boring good, just found out. So you have to hold their hand through having conversations about them. I'm not saying it makes it right, but it does make it what it is. But it's also why none of these conversations matter. You are ridiculous to think that Fernando Mendoza's Heisman moment came against a team who has not won a Power 4 game since January. That's not a thing. That's not a real thing. But we do live in this world where everybody wants to overreact to every little thing that happens, right? Like Julian Sand became the Heisman Trophy favorite after what he did against Penn State. Now Fernando Mendoza is taking it back over, right? Ty Simpson will probably have another moment where he's the favorite. And then Marcel Reed will have his moment where he's the favorite. And somehow Arch Manning will get pushed back into this conversation if Texas beats Texas A&M, right? But like none of it matters. Just get to December 6th, undefeated. And then whoever takes care of business is going to win the award. So continue to argue with Indiana fans online and put them back in their place and tell them they're new money and they're new to this. You need to calm down. Humble yourself. You haven't done anything yet. Indiana fans continue to enjoy what's been the greatest 18-month span in Indiana football history. Everybody enjoy it. Argue with each other. Keep it respectful. But understand that none of this matters. The only thing that matters is Ohio State taking care of business on November 29th, because I do agree. I think my takeaway from the Penn State game wasn't that, wow, Fernando Mendoza led a game-winning drive. It was that, man, Indiana is a really good football team, but Penn State reminded them that there are levels to this in terms of depth of talent, because Indiana had to dive into their talent pool for the first time all season, and it kind of ran bare. While Penn State, their season hasn't been good, but they're from a talent standpoint, there's still a bunch of NFL players on that team. So when the depth of talent started to be the thing that was going to decide the game, that's when you saw Penn State start to take over a little bit. Because for the first time, Indiana's frontline guys weren't all available, weren't all 100%. Now what happens if Indiana, that happens again, but they're playing a team that's actually good? Right? Indiana doesn't have an Arvell Reese, let alone a Riley Pettichon, right? D'Angelo Pons is good, but they don't have a guy behind. They don't have a Devin Sanchez behind a D'Angelo Pons. Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper are good, but they don't have a Brandon Ennis and a Bryson Rogers and a Mylan Graham behind those guys, right? They've got some. Michael Kamara is very good. He is a very good defensive end. But they're not pairing him with a Caden Curry the way Ohio State's pairing Kenyatta Jackson. But also you got Edric Houston, who's starting to look a little better, looking really good, and Caden McDonald. Tywone Malone didn't play on Saturday, and it was like, it's okay, we'll just play Edric Houston more. As much as we're talking about the right side of the offensive line and the struggles, Ohio State didn't have its starting right tackle on Saturday, and they replaced him with a top 150 recruit in Ian Moore. Cardinal Tate didn't play on Saturday, and Ohio State replaced him with a 5-star recruit. And that's the problem I think Indiana's going to run into on December 6th. It's not that they're not a good football team. They're a very good football team. It's just at some point you got to lean on your depth a little bit. And they don't have that yet because this is the second year of Kirk Cignetti, and he's taken over a program who was historically the worst college football program in the country. So they don't have the depth of talent for a 4-quarter game against Ohio State. Penn State just did what it always does and has been doing. I mean, you can take James Franklin off the sideline, but you can't take James Franklin out the program. They can make it interesting, but they can't win the football game. And that was kind of the point there. So I get it. Indiana's had a good year. But there's a reason everybody's been so slow to the idea of Indiana being good at football. And when they get on the field with teams who have recruited high-end talent year in and year in and year in and year in, as a team who is still in the early stages of turning that program around, even if they've won some football games, Penn State showed us what can happen. Oregon kind of showed us what could happen, even if they couldn't finish it off. And Ohio State's significantly better than both of those teams. Let's take a final break, and then we'll end with the privilege things here on Buckeye Talk.
If we knew more about our sleep, what would we do differently? Would we go to bed at a consistent time or take steps to reduce interruptions to our sleep? With the all-new Sleep Score, Apple Watch measures your bedtime consistency, interruptions, and sleep duration. Then, every morning it combines these factors into an easy-to-understand score from 1 to 100. So you'll know how to take the quality of your sleep from good to excellent. Introducing the new Sleep Score on Apple Watch. iPhone 11 or later required.
You don't technically need this car. You say that out loud to yourself. You say, I have no space. You say, I'm just looking. Then you click. Then you zoom in on photo number 87 and whisper, oh no. Then you text a friend, the one who always enables you. You say to yourself, this is the last one, knowing it is not. You don't need this car. But maybe, just maybe, this car needs you. Bring a trailer. It's never just a car.
And we're back here on Buckeye Talk. Steven Means and the Texers in a Rants pod. 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. We'll close out with these rants here from the 937. I have been thinking about sending this rant for a few weeks, so I'm happy you sent the call out for them. I'm tired of hearing after every game about what this team doesn't do well. I am not sure it will matter or not, but I am certain that the two things it does well make it the best team in the country. The defense is the very best in the country, and its best can shut down every other team in college football. On offense, the passing attack can put opponents in hell with how to contain the two best receivers in the country, with the best quarterback in the country throwing it to him. I don't honestly care if they only get 4 yards of carry, because that's all that's really needed from the backs, in my opinion. I do want Tegra to not be a liability, but he was last year too, and they won the title, so I don't see why they can't do the same this year. No team in the country is perfect, but OSU is the very best of them and are, in my mind, the front runner to win the title. And here's a couple of more. I didn't write the number down here, so I do apologize that I forgot the number, but okay, I'll rant, and the rant is about myself. Ohio State has finally reached my lifelong expectations as a Buckeye fan. Very strong on offense, a beast on defense, and sufficient enough on special teams, which has equated to an undefeated season to this point. So what's the problem? I'm bored. Every week I know Ohio State is going to whip its opponent thoroughly, and I find myself now a jaded Buckeye fan. Arriving at a place of dominance that I have longed for 50 years is not as great as I thought it would be. Now I long for stress games after finding out what weekly superiority looks like, which is more the name, image, and likeness of a scrimmage than an actual game. What I've come to learn is that I think I'll never be satisfied with Ohio State football unless I can order up results to my satisfaction on a menu with a little bit of this, another Holy Buckeye moment, and a little bit of that, another The Spot, resulting in a win over Michigan, an undefeated regular season, a Big Ten championship, and a natty. What a pitiful Buckeye fan I have come to realize I am. Final rant from Joel in the 604. Steven, I have a rant about our fan base. It is almost embarrassing to see how privileged and spoiled this fan base is. I watched it happen last year after the Michigan loss, and I watched it happen during every game we play. We need to have more faith in our coaches. It is utterly embarrassing to watch and hear how our fan base talks about this team/coaches during a game, complaining about the plays we call, complaining that Ennis doesn't get the ball, or just straight up mad that we aren't winning by 35 plus points in the second quarter. Watch some interviews, people. It is not that hard to know exactly what they are wanting/trying to do. I've had enough of the flip-flop back and forth of, I hate this team. Why can't we throw the ball every play? I can't believe they just scored on us. We have let up 6 touchdowns on the entire year. I get it. We are all frustrated with the tinkering that they have been doing, but who am I to tell Ryan Day, who just went through the gauntlet of hell last year and came out of it with a national championship, how he is supposed to run his team? In conclusion, we all need to put the trust and faith in Ryan Day a whole lot more. and stop acting like a bunch of spoiled children who didn't get the new Xbox when they already have a PS5 at home. Goes for whenever someone on our team doesn't make a perfect play. You know what I saw when Julian threw that pick on Saturday? Everyone saying, oh, there goes the Heisman, or there's no way he's a first-round pick or first in the Heisman voting after this. It's like immediately everyone loses all hope they could ever have for this team or its players whenever there's one bad play. That's just life as a fan, man. But that's your privilege, seriously. And I chose the word privilege for that category when I put those two rants down. And I don't mean it negatively. I think that's your privilege. That's what being a fan of a team is. It's the emotions you go through through a game of, we're going to win. No, we're going to lose. Everything is terrible. Everything is amazing, right? You get to live in consistent hyperbole, which is where I come in, where sometimes I need to live in that hyperbole with you. And I think I do that often on post-game pods. I'm coming in hot a lot of the times in those post-game pods because I'm trying to match the energy that I think you guys are bringing to the table a lot of the times, right? Where nothing is ever perfect, right? There's always something to tweak. There's always something to fix, which is why I've always respected Ryan Day, especially this year, his acknowledgement of that, right? Because we could have Brian Kelly, who someone asked him, I forget after what game it was, but they asked him about his run game, which they won the game, yeah, but their run game was horrid in that game. And Brian Kelly's like, how dare you? How dare you ask us about our run game? We just won. How dare you? It's a dumb question. How dare you? Meanwhile, Ohio State's beating Minnesota 42-3, and Ryan Day is going up there and talking about his freshman running back, who is awesome, and going, I swear, if you don't tuck the ball and stop putting it in harm's way, I'm going to lose it. He's comparing his backup quarterback to Dumb and Dumber because he didn't hit the hole the right way, right? He's listing off everything that went wrong. And it's because the standard's the standard. And we all hold him to that standard. We all hold Ohio State. That's their standard. Beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win national title. In that order, that's their standard. That's been the standard for years, on decades. That is the standard at Ohio State. That's what you're striving for every year. So anytime it feels like there's something about this team that isn't playing to the level of standard that allows you to accomplish those three goals, we're going to talk about it. Because he's going to talk about it. Now, of course, is there a way to go too far with things? Of course, there's always a way to go too far with things. But that's when we're here to reel you back in, right? That's what the Monday Leave No Doubt pod is for. We reel you back in. We spend all post-game pod where I'm on edge and going, what the heck was that? Why is Nate Roberts playing fullback? It's not working. Stop doing that. And then I come back on the Monday pod and I'm like, I still hate it, but I understand what you're doing. I understand purpose. I understand the process of you trying to figure out the 105 guys on your roster and who can help you accomplish those three goals. But I do think it's okay for you to go through those emotions. I hope those are never taken from people, because it does feel like sometimes those emotions, people try to take them from fans. No, you're fanatic. Your entire job is to live in the world of ridiculousness. And that's okay, because you get to the end of the road and sometimes you get a gold trophy out of it, right? Like, the Michigan loss sucked last year. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, didn't it feel great that you lost to Michigan because it got you a national trophy? But it made the story cooler. It felt like your team that you root for took itself to its lowest point and found a way to climb out of the hole, right? I don't know how many of you guys have read Bill Rabinowitz, who former Dispatch employee, now he's doing his own Substack. He wrote a book called Buckeye Brotherhood, and it's like taking you through the story of how that team won a national title. Can Bill Rabinowitz write the book of Ohio State brought back all its good players, it added a couple good players in the portal, and then it smacked everybody around? The end. Like, that's not an interesting story, right? If they do it this year, it's interesting because the concept of they're not supposed to be doing this. This is supposed to be by Ohio State standards, a rebuilding year, which a rebuilding year is like you go 10-2. Because even 9-3, this team doesn't go 9-3. That's not what they do here. 2 losses is crazy. So the fact that they're doing this with a brand new group of people and it feels like it's ushering in this new era of Ryan Day, that's what makes this story interesting. So if they dominate the whole season, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to watch. But I agree. Ohio State doesn't know failure, true failure, because they are the most recession-proof program of the past 30 years. But you didn't get that way by just like slipping and falling. No, because everybody has a standard of what's necessary, what's expected. And what's expected is to beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, win the national championships. They won the national championship. Day's got 2 Big Ten championships on his belt. He's got a 1 win over Michigan, and he's got to get more. But yes, it can get a little crazy and a little hectic sometimes. It can be a little frustrating when it's like they just won by 40, and we're going Tegra Shabola on 4 plays didn't look great, and so they could have won by more. But that's the point. Because Ohio State's not measuring itself by everybody else. This fan base is not even measuring itself by everybody else, which is that's so fun watching them go at it with Indiana fans. Because it's not about Indiana. It's not about Michigan, really, even. It's not about anybody. It's about Ohio State and what they're chasing. And they're chasing excellent. What did Herman Boone say in Remember Titans? Perfection. And when you're chasing that means you got to tweak the things that need to be tweaked. It doesn't mean we can't celebrate the wins. We honor the wins, and we acknowledge the wins. And we also honor the players who have helped those wins, which is why you're not going to hear me say anything about Julian Sands. Like, we didn't even talk about Julian Sands' interceptions really all like that. He threw a pick, and he overthrew a Max Clare on what could have been 14 extra points, so you have to acknowledge it. But at no point on this podcast, at least, did we look at Julian Sand overthrow a receiver for what maybe have been the first time, at least I've seen, in a football game. And the interception, it's not changing my opinion on this team. Is Tegra Shabola's struggles at right guard and the fact that the right side of the offensive line in general, because even before injury, Phillip Daniels had some rough moments. The right side of the offensive line isn't changing my opinion on who I think is the best team in the country and who I think is going to win the national title. And I don't even think there are fans who think that. I just think fans want the best for their team. You all do. That's what you want. And sometimes that means that emotion can get a little hectic. But that's your role in this. And I'm never going to take that away from you guys. 614-350-3315. Thank you all who sent in rants. We got a lot. We have a lot of rants. So I gotta do more of these. You guys are what make the pod special. So we got to start including you guys and your guys' voices a little more often than we do. That's on me. I wanted you guys to really get to know Stefan and Andrew because they were so new. And obviously this pod for a long time was myself and 2 other gentlemen who you guys love. And I'm sure, especially with Doug, since he's back around, I'm sure you guys are tapped into what him and Bill are doing. They do great stuff as well. But, yeah, I would love for you guys to have more voice. So we're going to do a lot more of these going forward because we got to, because you guys are what make the pod. Without you, there is no me. You complete me. Look at me getting all sentimental. 614-350-3315, 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. As you're listening to this podcast, I'm walking into the Woody to talk to Ryan Day as the Buckeyes prepare to play UCLA on Saturday, second to last home game of the season. So for myself and for the texters, talk to you guys later.